The Mountain Manifesto, the historical context of resistance, lessons for liberation. History is a weapon. It arms us with examples of ordinary people who faced extraordinary tyranny and toppled it without firing a shot. Across the centuries, the oppressed have proven that unity, courage, and moral conviction are mightier than the chains of exploitation. Today, as the machinery of corporate greed and inherited power tightens its grip, we must reclaim these lessons and wield them as tools for our own liberation. Some examples. Marching against empire, Gandhi's Salt March. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi shattered the illusion of British invincibility with a single act. He walked. With blistered feet and unyielding resolve, he led thousands to the Arabian Sea to make salt, defying colonial laws that bled India dry. The Salt March was no mere protest. It was an earthquake. It rippled across the world. It reminded the oppressed that civil disobedience can unmake empires, and it proved that nonviolence does not mean weakness. It means wielding moral power so potent that the oppressor's weapons become irrelevant. Example 2. Breaking chains without blood, Mandela in South Africa. Nelson Mandela and the anti-apartheid movement turned decades of systemic brutality into a triumph of reconciliation. Through strikes, boycotts, and unshakable persistence, they exposed apartheid as morally bankrupt and economically unsustainable. Mandela's release from prison was not just a personal victory, it was a signal that nonviolent resistance could bend the arc of history toward justice. South Africa's transformation demonstrated that the fight for dignity cannot be won through vengeance, but it can be won through rebuilding and restoration. Example 3. Martin Luther King Jr. in the Civil Rights Movement, marching for freedom. In the face of tear gas, police dogs, and fire hoses, Martin Luther King Jr. marched from Montgomery to Washington. He led a movement that refused to meet violence with violence. Instead, King exposed America's deepest shame and forced it to confront its hypocrisy. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were both born not out of armed insurrection, but from sit-ins, boycotts, and marches that turned suffering into strength. King showed us that nonviolent resistance is not passive, it's relentless. It's strategic, and it's transformative. More examples. Revolutions without bloodshed, Czechoslovakia and the Philippines. In 1989, the Velvet Revolution swept through Czechoslovakia. Thousands filled the streets chanting for democracy. Factories went silent. Students walked out, and the regime crumbled under the weight of its own illegitimacy. Without firing a bullet, the people reclaimed their nation. 3 years earlier in the Philippines, millions took to the streets, armed only with prayers and flowers. The People Power movement faced down tanks and toppled the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos. Their victory was a testament to the strength of peaceful defiance and remains a rallying cry for those who dare to stand against corruption and tyranny. There's also lessons to be learned from failed revolutions, the trap of violence. Because history warns us, revolutions that turned to violence, whether it was France, Russia, or Cambodia, often replaced one oppressor with another. Blood spilled in the name of freedom has too often watered the seeds of new tyrannies. The guillotine and the firing squad may overthrow kings, but they do not build democracies. Violence is chaos. It breeds cycles of retribution that devour the people that they claim to protect. Nonviolence, on the other hand, is creation. It builds solidarity, it fosters empathy, and it leaves no wounds that cannot heal. We have weapons of peace, and we need to use them. This is what resistance today needs to look like. We do not need guns to dismantle oppression. We can't outgun those who have the biggest guns. We need refusal. Refusal to buy from corporations that exploit. Refusal to fuel economies that poison the earth. Refusal to obey laws that strip us of dignity. The power of the oppressor lies in our participation, and when we step away, their machines grind to a halt. Some of those tools are general strikes, which choke profit streams, boycotts, which starve corrupt systems, walkouts, which expose hypocrisy and deny our labor to those who are oppressing us, and finally, today, maybe the most important, digital disengagement, which cuts the roots of surveillance capitalism clean. When millions unplug, withdraw, and refuse, the system will unravel. So here's the call to action. Inherit the mantle of resistance. We aren't the first to face this choice. Gandhi's salt, Mandela's resilience, King's dream, the The Velvet Revolution's chants and the people power movement's prayers light the path before us. Their struggles whisper to us through time, and they give us power. You can resist. You must resist. Now is the moment to rise, not with weapons, but with conviction. Not to destroy, but to rebuild. Not in hate, but in defiance of fear. History is watching, and the question is no longer whether we can resist, but whether we will.